and Go is a classic example of this, right? It gets a 4.5 or a 5-star rating. It's got the same amount of sugar in it as by volume as Coca-Cola. It's just fortified with nutrient. And you see the same with cereals with the star rating, which is a scam. Nutrigrain, which is 33% sugar, the rest ultra-processed carbohydrates, gets 4 stars. Butter, which is a whole food, more or less, gets 0.5 star. The whole system is a scam.
Prof. Grant Schofield here, put out a little clip about the health star rating and the scam that it is. And all of you out there watched that hundreds of thousands of times, which was cool. I was surprised about that. And there was a lot of discussion. So here's a response to a few of the questions that you guys raised. Enjoy it. Coca-Cola is about 11% sugar by volume. And that turns out to be roughly what Up and Go is. Obviously, Coke comes in bigger containers, so probably has more sugar. That doesn't defeat the fact that we've got a 4.5-star rating on a product that's, by all accounts, actually not healthy at all. It's a scam. One confusing thing about the health star rating, I think it's deliberately confusing, part of the bigger scam, because that's what we're dealing with, an actual scam here, is that technically it's actually only designed to compare products within the same category. So you can't compare milk with, say, bread or cheese or nuts. They're different things. And then the algorithm that does that is based on fat, particularly saturated fat, salt, and sugar. It doesn't really count ultra-processed carbohydrates and other things that screw it up. So that's part of the scam. I said in my video that got, surprisingly, 500,000 views, so thank you, Atlee, that butter gets 0.5 star, and I said it's more or less a whole food. Point was more or less. I mean, obviously a whole food is probably a vegetable or something that was running around in nature, but it's come from that. So I suppose technically butter is a processed food, not an ultra-processed food, but point still stands. It's basically butter falls into the healthy food category, and it's getting a star rating that says it's utterly unhealthy. The better alternative to the health star rating is what I call the human interference scoring system, or the HISS. It really has 3 categories. A green category, which is probably as much as you want. This is food that was clearly alive in nature recently. It's running around, flying, swimming, crawling, growing somewhere. That's whole food. Then there's a sort of orange category, which is processed food, which is everything that we've created since humans began to process food. And then you can have some of that. Most of that's actually reasonably okay. And then we've got ultra-processed food, which is the rest, which of course is the majority of food that New Zealanders and Australians and actually people around the world put in their shopping trolleys, and therefore I assume they eat. So that's the thing. If you need to have a label on a packet to indicate whether it's one of those categories, it's sort of defeating the purpose, right? But the health star rating, the reason it's such a scam is it classifies ultra-processed foods as healthy or unhealthy, whereas the whole category, I think, is one to be avoided. Now, there's things within that people argue about on the detail. Where do you put protein powder? It's not the same as a Snickers bar. Sure, details. But in a broad sense, we're going to be much better off if we start to think about food in those categories: whole food, processed or minimally processed, and ultra-processed. The ridiculous systems like the health star rating, other things exist like that around the world that put us in a situation where we believe that some of this stuff's actually good for us. The question is whether we should do a sugar tax. I think that some countries have done this and shown some real improvements in health, including in mental health. There's data around that. We've certainly got to raise more money and invest it in preventing poor health in the first place. At the moment, there seems to be no budget for that. If you're going to find a budget, you need to get some money from somewhere. That's probably a handy way of doing it. Does it result in perverse things? Probably. I'd be in pull for an ultra-processed food tax, and that could subsidise whole food. That's one way of doing things. Every time you add a tax, which frankly I'm not into doing, you create complexity and perversity in the system, so there's always that to think about. But fundamentally I'm opposed to a sugar tax.